Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Today I was looking through some charts and I noticed that our Altseason indicator is flashing a buy signal, and this is moments away before it finally breaks out and makes a new all-time high. This is going to be the very first time that we're finally starting to see all of the other altcoins outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum catching a bid, breaking out of their long-term accumulations and starting that push into new all-time highs. Every single cycle, the shortest window of opportunity comes inside of all of the altcoins. We only have a few months to be able to capture as much value and demand as possible, and today I have some very important charts that we're going to be breaking down that are ultimately going to explain exactly what's going to be happening over the next few months, and most importantly how we can go about making an insane killing off of this profit that's going to be generated. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Here we are jumping into today's video, taking a look at ETH to start, because here's the big thing, guys. We've all been waiting for Altseason. We know that once Bitcoin and ETH really start to run into new all-time highs, that's when the trickle-down effect happens and all of the other altcoins start to run. Now, we've been through this entire chop for the last year and a half approximately, as we've been building somewhat of a base of support. We've seen this massive breakout. We technically made the new all-time high in ETH, and really the only thing that we're waiting for right now is for ETH to finish this retest. And once this retest is done, I believe that that is the signal before we really start the next push upwards of $6,000 and $7,000 per Ethereum. You guys know my target for the end of this cycle is $20,000 per Ethereum. And I think that once this breakout starts, it's just going to shoot up all in one big move. We've noticed in prior cycles is once the altcoins start to run, there's only a matter of about 4 months where they really pick up in pace, and then that's when they top. You're talking about a 3.5-year cycle only for the altcoins to run just in the latter 4 months. Now that we're starting to see all of the big things need to happen with Ethereum breaking out, Bitcoin breaking out, now we're starting to see all of this new influx of new money coming in. I do firmly believe that this is about to be the signal that we've all been waiting for. Now, when we're watching ETH, the most important thing we need to be focusing on here is the Bitcoin dominance. We know that the Bitcoin dominance is topped. We've seen it reject from this resistance up here. We've seen not only the RSI flip bearish, but we've also seen the MACD cross bearish. And what I really think is interesting about this MACD is if we come and pull it up on a bigger scale and we zoom in here, notice every single one of our peaks inside of the bear markets. When 2018 happened, this was the very bottom of the 2017 cycle for Bitcoin dominance, or the peak of the altcoin cycle. And we saw that the MACD was at this really oversold level. And now this is where it rallied up. This is the peak of Bitcoin dominance. And then this was our last cycle for the altcoins. It ended up bottoming, but it wasn't quite as low as what we ended up seeing over here. However, from the peak versus where it ended, this is a pretty massive swing to the downside. Same with over in this period. Really big swing, about the same size of a swing. Even though it wasn't quite as oversold, keep in mind that the ratio was a lot higher and it was much more overbought than even the 2017 cycle. Now, when we come over and look at where we're at today, we've pretty much just been consolidating, really just ranging inside of this resistance. Sometimes we cross bearish, but we haven't really had any true breakdown until just recently. The MACD crossed bearish. We saw all of this new bearish volume coming in here with the histogram, and we're finally just back down below this mean average. Now, generally speaking, what you're going to see is once the market hits this mean, which is this dotted line right here, notice how a lot of our consolidation has either taken place on support of this, or once we come back below this level, that's really where the altcoin rally heats up the most. And what we notice is as we're crossing back down below this average, this is generally speaking where we're going to see that altcoin cycle heat up the most. And I do think that this is going to be what is headed for us next, depending on how oversold we actually get in this cycle. Now, all of this is coming to a head. What we're going to end up seeing is this rejecting and falling at least back down to this 47 to 48% dominance. We could see a bounce off of this level, but you guys know my take profit for altcoins is going to most likely be around this 40% region. I do find it likely that what we're going to end up seeing is a big washout all the way back down to this main support. This would have been our all-time low of the 2018 cycle or the 17 cycle. Technically, the bottom was in 2018. This was the very peak all-time low that Bitcoin dominance ever made. And then we can see that we held support here when we started uptrending into that bear market. And then even when we came back down in the last cycle, we rejected. Altseason happened here. We came right back down to that same level at 40% and pretty much just bounced on it and held support. We saw another rally throughout this cycle as Bitcoin has started to take charge. A lot of that ETF volume was not circulating inside of the altcoins, but it was really centralized inside of Bitcoin. Bitcoin dominance grows, and it was climbing all the way up here, but we still have rejected. We've confirmed the downtrend. We have a lower low and a lower high, and I think that we are once again going to end up revisiting this same support. Now, here's the thing, guys. The window for opportunity with altcoins is a very short one. If we notice in the last cycle, basically how much time we had for when the altcoins peaked, or what Bitcoin dominance peaked and the altcoins started to run, it was only about 140 days that move actually lasted. I think that this cycle is going to be a little bit more comparable to the last one, where we're going to have a really short window, maybe about 4 months, where the altcoins are going to start picking up in pace, outperforming Bitcoin, and that's where we're going to end up revisiting this 40% region. Now, when we come out here, guys, it's important that we're understanding why the total market cap 3 is the most important alt season chart outside of Bitcoin dominance. Remember, Bitcoin dominance is our most important chart for understanding when the rotation out of Bitcoin and into the altcoins is going to be. We know that rotation has already started to take place. That was indicated by this big run inside of Ethereum, running into a new all-time high, having a much more extended breakout than Bitcoin did. But it doesn't really happen for the majority of the altcoins in the market until ETH is really into true price discovery. As of now, we've technically broken back below those prior all-time highs, and we're just consolidating, right? This is a support and resistance flip before the big push into price discovery happens. But the total market cap 3 is all of the markets in crypto, excluding Bitcoin and excluding Ethereum. So it excludes Ethereum, and what we notice here is every single cycle, when this breaks out, that is actually true alt season. That's what alt season is. It's always reliant upon ETH and Bitcoin going into that new all-time high. When ETH follows Bitcoin in a price discovery, that's really where all of the big rotation takes place, because we need the ETH on-chain activity to pick up if we're going to see people buying new cryptos, bridging over to these EVM chains, swapping, doing all of the stuff that we're expected to see when all of the hype comes in, right? So every cycle we've seen pretty much the same pattern, where the trend starts, we get this big blow off top, we come all the way back down and break below this parabolic trend, and then that's what signals the new bear market. We come back down, go through a sideways accumulation, and then that's what signals the next big push. And our last cycle followed this exact same pattern once again. Once ETH started to really run, all of these other altcoins ran with it, and that's where true alt season happens. Once we came back down, we rejected below this trend line here and here. That was what signaled the bigger decline all the way back down to the bear market bottom. Now, throughout this entirety of this new cycle, what I find really interesting is ETH has had this big washout, and ETH hasn't trended nearly as high as what some of these other altcoins did. In fact, ETH came back down and broke this main trend line that it had been holding, and that trapped so many people out of the market. But if we come over and actually take a look at the total market cap 3, we can see that this thing never really had that same size of a drop. And the total market cap 3 has consistently maintained this parabolic trend, even dating all the way back to June of 2022 when ETH bottomed. We were riding off this trend line, even though we made a couple lower lows, we were always building this rounded bottom formation, and even once we started to catch a bid into this beginning of the new cycle, every single sell-off has still came right back down onto this support. Even when ETH made this big washout and broke its trend line, the total 3 was just coming back down and retesting it. So this is actually held up better than Ethereum. And what that tells me is we're no longer dominated strictly by Ethereum. We're not only going to see all of the on-chain activity happening in ETH. I think that this is the cycle where all of that money diversifies and trickles down into some of the other chains. There's so many new projects out there, and there's a lot of value that is going to be divvied up across the board on all of these different platforms. We have bridges, we have swaps, we have cross-chain applications that allow us to basically be interoperable amongst all EVM, as well as CosmWasm smart contracts. We've never really had that perfect storm. In the last cycle, you had a couple different layer 1s, but even Cardano didn't have smart contracts in the last cycle. So to compare it with what's happening today, it's just not even the same thing. We now have true applications that work inside of these new chains, and I think that that is the reason why the total market cap 3 is held up so great to begin this cycle. All we're doing right now is just knocking on the door of these all-time highs. We already tagged it a couple different times over in here. Even on this most recent rally up, all we're doing is just hugging this resistance. This is more of an ascending triangle formation. It's going to break out. When it breaks out, it's going to flip this resistance, and that's where the next major alt season is going to be taking place. Whether that's 6K for ETH, whether that's 7K for ETH, I don't think it really matters. When ETH makes its next run into new all-time highs, there's a reason why this chart is holding up better than Ethereum so far, and I think that this thing has a very real potential of outperforming ETH. I think that the biggest gains this cycle are going to be made bridging over, buying new layer 1 ecosystems, buying the DEXs, buying the NFT marketplaces, buying liquid staking projects. All of this type of stuff is really where the market's going to be shifting to. And it makes sense to me that the reason why this has held up so good up to this point is because more people are trusting other blockchain applications outside of ETH. That is the perfect storm for alt season, because keep in mind, guys, the alt season really happens outside of Ethereum, right? If we're looking for all of the altcoins, Ethereum really starts to catch that bid, and that's what gives confidence for other people to start buying the other altcoins. And every single cycle it's been this way. We can come over here and finish up today's video by taking a look at the total market cap 3 against Ethereum. And this dates all the way back to 2017. Now, if we're looking at this chart, what you guys are going to notice here is we had been in this downtrend against Ethereum in the total market cap 3 for a long time, right? Ever since 2018, this market was making lower lows and lower highs, always rejecting. We had one false attempt at a breakout, which was a bull trap, and that was about June of 2022. If you guys remember, that was when the FTX collapse happened. This was just a retest. It falsely broke out of this downtrend. And it wasn't until right over in here in basically November of 2024, the very ending of 2024, that we finally saw the total 3 market cap break out against Ethereum. We saw massive amounts of new volume that came in here, exactly what you want to see inside of a breakout. And then when we pulled back, we saw all of this capitulation volume, and all of the capitulation volume took us right back down onto this same trend line. So when we look at this chart, it's very obvious to tell that we have finally hit that shifting point in the market. Not only has the total 3 broken out against Ethereum, indicated by this chart, but we have retested that downtrend that we had been under since December of 2018. That is a significant amount of time that the total 3 is underperformed against ETH. Now that this trend has shifted and we're looking at the total 3 just moments away from confirming the breakout of all-time highs, at the same time Bitcoin dominance is just topped and is getting ready to come back down to this 40% region, I think that there is a lot of really good things to be looking forward to, but most importantly, this chart is showing the trend reversal. We had breakout volume. On the retest, we had all of that seller capitulation. Now we're starting to uptrend again, and I think that we're moments away from doing one of these to wrap up this cycle. This will be a new all-time high with the total 3, and this is the best storm for the altcoins, because if the altcoins are going to be outperforming Ethereum in a time where institutions are actively buying and FOMOing into Ethereum, you got to understand that the amount of euphoria that we could see to the upside is really insane. Guys, we only have a few months left of this bull market. You know, we're getting close to the end of the year. From where we're at right now, just until the end of the year, let's go to January the 1st. You know, you're looking at about 112 days approximately from where we're at currently. So if we're looking at that, and then we come over here and we actually take a look at the Bitcoin dominance and how quick that run was in the last cycle, the altcoins only took about 140 days to finish out that move. So the idea that the next 4 months are most likely going to stack up the same, that's what I lean towards, right? That's kind of what my belief is. I do think that what's going to end up happening is this is going to come all the way back down to 40%, and it only takes, you know, a 4 months time frame for that all to happen. Keep in mind that we have seen cycles where altcoins peaked at the mid to end of January. So it's not like there's some specific time frame that we know exactly the end of the year they're going to top. Just because every cycle has topped at the end of the year, the end of the year varies month to month. We've seen a November top, we've seen December tops, and we've seen January tops. So we have a little bit of a range to look at here going over the rest of the few months. What I think is most likely, we're probably going to see a top at the end of the year. I don't think you really want to be holding on too much longer, whether that's January, whether that's, you know, December. I don't think it really matters so much. The end of the year is a shifting point for crypto. What we're going to be looking for is when this revisits 40%, we know that that's a major support level. We know that probably the market's going to bounce from there. And at the very least, we want to be out of our altcoin positions. Looking at all of the other ones, we know we still have quite a bit of upside potential still to go because we really haven't even broke those all-time highs. look at the push that happened in the last cycle when we finally got outside of those. It was a really big move into price discovery. Now, I'm not thinking that we're going to do something like this. I think what's going to happen is this big move all in one go, and that's just going to be the end of the cycle. We've coiled, we've built the foundation. The blow off top is going to be really quick. It's going to be really sudden, and most people are just going to miss out on it. And I do think that this is where the total market cap 3 finally makes a new all-time high for the first time since 2018 and gives us our biggest altcoin run that we have ever seen up to this point. I don't think that Bitcoin dominance needs to go to a new all-time low for us to have some of the most profitable altcoin conditions. The last cycle was very profitable for altcoins. 2017 was the most profitable, but I think that even if we just come back down and revisit 40%, there's going to be so much profit generated that it won't really matter long term. Anyways, guys, this is the video I had for you. Wanted to break down some charts, make sure we're looking at all of the major indices that are showcasing why this cycle is getting ready for really one of the biggest cycles we've ever seen. Institutions have already FOMO'd in. The altcoin total market cap 3 is now breaking out against ETH. Really, everything we need to see for true alt season is playing out, and I look forward to being able to trade it with you guys. So if you did find value, please do me a favor. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. If you guys want to see anything on buying, selling, trading over this cycle, when I'm going to be taking profits at the end of it, you guys definitely need to join my website, linked in the description of this video. I'd love to have you guys a part of the community. But with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next video. As always, peace out.